Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Fratello Talks. I'm your host Nacho, and today I'm joined by
Thomas
and
Gerard.
And we are going to be asking ourselves the question, are watch brands doing too much? We'll get into what exactly we mean by that in a minute. But before we do that, of course, let's do a wrist check. Thomas, what is on your wrist?
Well, I'm wearing something different. It's a bit weird, isn't it?
That is weird.
This is a 3D printed test case, or a prototype case, if you will, of the upcoming VPC model, Type 39, so 39 millimeter.
Yes.
Dive watch. So I'm doing a sort of a long-term test for ergonomics and fit. And
follow-up question.
Yeah.
What time is it?
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's very relaxing.
Okay. You should. I feel like you should draw some hands onto it with a Sharpie.
I should. I do look at it like all the time.
Right.
It's like, there it is.
No, but really cool. No, it's fun to see that already being put to the test. It's a little bit like when you're driving in certain parts of Europe and you see those prototype cars with the squiggly designs all over them, so people can't quite see the shape. But no, very, very cool to see that.
And it's actually really helpful. We did it a lot with the first model as well. And it really helps fine tune the fit and the ergonomics and
cool.
So yeah,
exciting stuff.
Yeah,
very nice. And Gerard, what is on your wrist today?
On my wrist is a Rolex Sea Dweller 16600. I think I bought it new in either 2002 or 2004, and it's one of my favorite Rolexes to wear. In fact, it's one which is very difficult to take off once you wear it. You want to wear it every day.
Yeah.
That's a good feeling.
That's the magic of the Sea Dweller, right? Have you been diving with this one?
Not with this one, no.
Okay.
No, when I'm diving, I use a 14060, I think, like a regular submarine without a date, and it's slightly older with a tritium dial and.
Yeah, but good to have this as a backup in case you ever get into some saturation diving, right?
That's, exactly. Yeah. This one is highly involved. True.
Very cool. Yeah. Very, very nice. And I'm wearing my Omega Speedmaster reference 3570.
It's been a while.
It has been a while, but I've actually worn it quite a bit recently. I've been almost having a second honeymoon with this one. I just haven't worn it on Wednesdays when we usually record the show, but it has been getting some wrist time. And of course, I was in Biel earlier this week for a little Omega event that they put together for the 60th anniversary of the NASA flight qualification. Got to see some pretty special watches over there, and it's a cool one. I'll be working on an article that should be coming out soon. So with that out of the way, let's get into the main topic today. So we said, are watch brands doing too much? What we mean by that, I believe, is a bit of a sentiment that I think we've seen echoed in other publications and with other people in the industry, but perhaps in a different way. What we want to ask ourselves is, are there too many watches coming out? Is there too much that's just being thrown out there day in, day out? I mean, we can look at maybe some individual watch brands, not really to call them out, but just as examples of it. And also just to see, because it does feel like there's a new watch or several new watches week in, week out. And then we want to ask ourselves, is that to the benefit or the detriment of watch brands, right? It's this perpetual quest for relevancy and for staying hot and for staying on top of the game, just making it worse for all of us. And I think that's basically it. That's the topic for the day. So Thomas, do you have any thoughts on the matter?
Well, I think it's an ecosystem that we are part of as watch media, and the way we cover the watch world. I think it sort of feeds on each other, but it's true that there's like a hype cycle it's so short, with release upon release upon release, and just the pressure to constantly be doing something new. I do think it's somewhat to the detriment of watch brands for one primary reason, and that's watches don't tend to become sort of iconic, or if you will, that's a big word, but they don't tend to sort of really conquer a space in our collective consciousness if you just constantly get new versions and new dials, new colors, new bracelets, new. So I think it would be better to sometimes maybe slow down a little bit and only release when you have something relevant to release.
Yeah.
But then that's probably commercially not very interesting to do. I mean, they're not doing it for nothing, but I think purely from a branding perspective, I don't know. It could be a little bit slower, I guess.
True. I think that there is that sort of feeling that you have to fill X gaps in the calendar each year in order to be a relevant brand in some sense. How about you, Gerard? Have you seen a difference in the way that things were done, maybe early 2000s or a little bit further back, the way that watch brands approached it, or has it always felt a bit like it was always the next best thing every few weeks?
Oh, I definitely think that if you look back in history, that nowadays there's more models coming out every year. I mean, there's even this kind of list that you can see which models came out in which year, and then it's almost like a pyramid. I mean, the further you go towards date, and then there's more watches. But I think, as well as Thomas already said, it's not for nothing. I mean, today's world is probably quicker, faster than in the past. And as well, I understand that brands do want to introduce something new as soon as possible, because then you're inside again. Then the media start writing again about you, but the big problem is that for the audience, it takes more time. In my point of view, it takes more time to get used to a model and to admire a model than you have now at the moment. Because before you really know if you like a watch, you should have seen it a few times. You should tried it a few times, but then there's a new model already, and then there's another new model coming. So that's a bit of the problem of so many watches coming out. Yeah.
You've been a retailer, of course, back in the day. What was it like for you back then when a brand? I mean, you did your purchasing, you bought your collection, you had it, and then new model. What was it like? Was it a good thing because it draws attention, or is it a bad thing because it keeps pushing you?
I think at the time I was a retailer, there weren't that many models, and it was pretty much at one point a year. You did your buying in. It was either at Basel or SIHH that the new models came out for the rest of a year, and then you bought over there for the rest of the year. In fact, there was not so much coming out after those fairs anymore. So it was easier to regulate, I think, than it is at the moment.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, obviously it gives us news to cover and things to get excited for. But it does feel like, and perhaps it's also that which sort of skews our perception. We are sort of in the very middle of this constant communication stream about everything watches, and maybe as an enthusiast, and perhaps like an enthusiast that operates at like one step removed, you can potentially just get excited a couple times a year. Maybe you're not really you don't really have your finger on the pulse of every single brand as we kind of have to for our role in this. And then perhaps you just you get excited a couple times a year whenever I don't know, Omega or Rolex. Well, I mean, Rolex is truly usually just once a year, unless they have some sneaky releases here and there. But yeah, it's how do we feel about something like that? Because it feels like there are brands that still hold on to a more old school approach. I think Rolex is a good example of it. Patek will typically also usually only release some watches around Watches and Wonders, and I mean it works for them, but it's also very easy in the sense that they are at the top of the food chain in a way, and at least Rolex is in terms of demand and selling a million watches a year. I mean that's then you're doing pretty well. You don't need to go too crazy. But yeah, it does seem that there is this sort of fast paced thing. Do you think that there is going to be a point of like a saturation point, a point where people just get fatigued of seeing new watches week in, week out?
I don't know. Perhaps some of us are already there at this point, but I think to your earlier point, like the brands that don't really need more attention, they can afford to do so because people are going to write about Rolex anyway. But if you're sort of in the shadows of those brands, like what is the one way to get the media to pay attention to you? It's probably to release a new model. That's sort of how you stay relevant. But I do think you see brands jumping on a bit of a bandwagon as well. You see a lot of these sort of micro trends, if you will, like all the brands. Like I've been ranting about vignette dials forever. Like just this morning, it's a pet peeve of mine. But that's one of those things. Like all these brands are doing one vignette dial after another, and then the next trend comes along, and who knows what it is, and then they'll all do that one after another, just because it's so hard to come up with something actually relevant or inspired, or these are sort of must-have releases, rather than it's a creative expression that needed to come out.
Yeah. I think as well it's a bit a difference in image those brands have. I mean, the brands who have a more traditional image, like the brands you just mentioned. Yeah. I mean, they probably don't need that so much that they are in the shining every day or every week. I mean, they can just afford to have a bit more laid back image. And other brands, they really rely on media, on probably social media even, which is very, very quick at the moment, and they need it more than other brands, I think.
Yeah. It's interesting to see the different approaches. And do you think that there are other ways in which watch brands would be able to stay relevant without necessarily, releasing something new? I mean, in the past we've seen things like. Obviously, I mean, sometimes it came attached with new watches being released, and towards the end it really always did. But the case of Omega and James Bond, and obviously I think every time a James Bond movie comes out, they probably get a bit of a decent windfall in terms of sales, and probably not just from the Seamaster that Bond is wearing, but it's I wonder if there are other ways, like obviously we saw Rolex give way to Louis Vuitton in terms of Formula One sponsorship, and I presume that's probably quite an appealing way of creating brand awareness. I mean, Tag Heuer, Louis Vuitton is really getting a lot of exposure there. I rarely watch Formula One, but when I do, I have seen some of these shots where you see the car going through the track, and everywhere that isn't the car and the track, it's just Tag Heuer logos or Louis Vuitton logos, and you think, wow, that's really more than on the nose. That's just like completely in your face that there is this advertising. But I wonder what other ways other than releases there would be of raising awareness.
I think there is. I think brands could do more with one model, just not only attract attention to the next model, but attract attention again to a model already existing, and probably to different angles, to different parts of the watch, or as well, just again about the same watch, but in a different kind of presentation. I think that there could be much more presentation about the same product than only making another watch again. And then it might be that the audience got more attracted to a model, because otherwise you forget it already. There's a new one, so you forgot the last one already. Yeah. It didn't even fell right into your mind already. It's
I think it also has a sort of it dilutes the value of the product if you keep changing it all the time. I think Omega Speedmaster is a famous example, right? There's a big debate. Like if you ask RJ, should there be a ton of special editions? He says yes. I want something to collect. But they clearly steered away from that because it started to dilute maybe the power of just a pure Speedmaster. And I think that's a very fine balance to write, because if you don't change, if you don't iterate, then you seem to fall out of grace quite quickly. But if you do, and you do it too fast, then it sort of dilutes the message of your core model. It's true. It's a really tough balance.
If you do it too fast, certainly, and I think they did too fast in the past. Every 5 years, a special model would be nice, and then it would be something collectible as well, and something to look out for.
Absolutely,
and something which could attract a lot of attention again. Yeah. But if you do it every year, and it was almost like that, if it wasn't more than once a year, it becomes a bit much, and it becomes flooded, and then it's not so nice to collect as well for everybody. I mean, it's not just buying every model which comes out. It's something which you look out to, and if there's something special for a certain amount of time or in a certain number, it's nice to acquire it and add it to your collection, I think.
Definitely, and I think, for example, the event that I attended with Omega, obviously celebrating the 60th anniversary of NASA qualification, is one thing. That's one way to raise awareness. I believe in the past we would have seen Omega couple that with a maybe like a mission patch Speedmaster or something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, this time they decided to just do a little event, raise some awareness, and basically tell the story that this great story that is attached to that watch.
Yeah.
And this makes me think, well, there's some watches that have that tie-in with great stories. You look at Rolex and maybe Cousteau or even Cameron and his work and things like this. There's many of these in Hoyer and racing, and it's a lot of associations that kind of only bigger brands with products that have been around for longer can sort of benefit from. Yeah. But I wonder in which way, other than just iterating, can maybe younger brands or even some of the micro brands try and stay relevant? Is that more you just build your core audience and then just every now and then you have something for them, or do you try and find mass appeal? I think we've seen both approaches, but in a way, one of the brands that are doing the latter is Studio Underdog. I mean, we've seen them really just iterating and collaborating, and there's a lot of it. Yet it seems that they've kind of struck a balance between pace and, I mean, the pace maybe is quite high, but they've still found a way to still be well received. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you see some brands doing a lot, there is a bit of a lashback. And when I talk about this, it's probably just like very much the insider community that has that reaction, and maybe not so much the wider, less enthusiastic watch buying public. But it is interesting that there has to be a balance, and it makes me wonder, what can smaller watch brands sort of leverage to both stay relevant and not overdo it, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of strategy as well. As in, you drop a watch, and what do you want to have happen? Do you want to sell 1,000 on day one and then discontinue it?
Yeah.
Or do you want it to be a staple for your brand, and do you want to sell 50 every month?
Yeah.
For years to come.
Yeah.
That completely determines what your entire marketing strategy is, and how you approach it, and how you treat your models, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Studio Underdog is a good example. Like they've become really, really good at massive sort of instant success. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, I'd be interested to see, like, what does it do in the sort of long tail of those products? Do their sales completely dry up if they don't introduce something new, or do they have a steady sort of baseline? I think it's really two very different approaches.
Yeah, and we shouldn't forget that we're talking totally different numbers.
Yeah,
they produce so. I mean, if you're talking about the bigger brands staying relevant, it's thousands and thousands of watches. So your audience is different as well. You have a huge worldwide audience, and those smaller brands, I think they have a way smaller audience. So this audience has to be approached in a different manner and different way as well, I think. And yeah, only after a few hundred pieces, then they go on to the next one, and it most of them, they don't stay in a permanent collection. So that's a different approach as well, I think. Yeah,
it seems that slowing down is almost a privilege reserved for brands that have earned a specific reputation and a specific. They've built something now that is so self-sustaining that they don't really have to burn the candle at both ends and sort of keep it going at such a pace. But it is interesting to see how. I think, Omega is a good example to look at, how there was this approach of just releasing so many things, so many limited products as well, and that then there was like a counter action to try and not go down that path of overdoing it, and now perhaps adjusting to a little bit of a slower pace. But it is interesting. I mean, and it could all just come down to like the average attention span being fractions of a second. It feels like these days, right? I mean, it's. Do you remember what Instagram post was there 3 days ago? No, absolutely. I don't remember the one I saw this morning. Right? That's I think kind of the big issue is that you mix this like instant worldwide communication, but it's not really. There's no real longevity to it, right? I mean, we can all remember some of these incredible ads that we've seen for Rolex watches and Omega watches and watches of many other brands. These sort of like iconic taglines and these images that people even today collect and put in frames and hang on to. Yet, what brands are doing this day, it feels like it's with digital being the primary method for not just advertising, but also sale. It feels like a brand can really reinvent its image, especially a brand that only exists in a digital way. They can reinvent their image from one day to the next. At what to us from our side feels like the snap of a fingers, but then
we shouldn't forget that about the ads you just talked about, camera ads, car ads as well. But you saw them more often. It wasn't once. It wasn't just. The next month, if it was in an issue in a magazine whatsoever, the same ad was there again, and the next one it was there again, and it was there again, and so it became something like a legend almost because you saw them so often. And now you see it. As you said this morning on Instagram, and that was it, and probably just one or two other times, and then there's the next model.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think this also ties into even if you look at celebrity culture with watches, like back in the days, there are certain celebrities that you link with a specific watch because it was their sort of characteristic watch. Whereas now, Patek Philippe drops a Tiffany dial Nautilus, who gets seen on the very next red carpet event with that watch, and then it's gone again.
Yeah.
So it's just these people buy those watches for once almost, just to get seen the first time, be the first. Okay, on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And it's such a sort of a disposable, throwaway kind of. Yeah.
So, but even for those big brands, I mean, it's only the example you just gave is a very good one. It was a very short-lived.
Yeah.
It's not something we will see for the next 10 years.
No, and we have to also then keep in mind that we're paying attention to these things, or at least we notice them, right? It comes up in our feeds and we see it. But I believe that maybe for people who are maybe not as tapped into that, they maybe see, oh yeah, so and so's wearing this watch. Oh, that's really cool. I really like this watch. And they don't realize the implications that like 99 point whatever percentage of cases it is product placement on behalf of the brands, right? I mean, there's very rarely will you see a celebrity, that hasn't been dressed by a stylist who's made a deal with so-and-so clothing brand and whatever. So everything is very much curated and a little bit artificial, but in some way the power and influence of celebrities, and especially in this world, like they are kind of the people that you see over and over and over and over again. Yeah. They may have a few weeks where they're the hot commodity and then they disappear for a while, but depending on when the Marvel movie comes out, I guess. But then it's.
But there's a real discrepancy with the core of a mechanical watch, because a mechanical watch is something that lasts.
Yeah.
It's something that goes beyond time, basically.
Yeah.
So it's really weird to see sort of fast fashion influences in mechanical timekeeping. It's really,
that's actually a really good point. There is this like paradoxical thing of like a watch you could have for the rest of your life. Who's actually buying a new one every week? There's people out there, right? But at the same time, you think, isn't this supposed to be like more of a meaningful, significant purchase to mark a milestone? And people will still approach it that way. But at the same time, the way that it's being advertised and almost like approached by the brands, it does feel like it's just like the next pair of sneakers, right? Where you think, okay, I'm going to have a pair of sneakers, have it for a year or two. At that point, they're going to look a certain way, and you're going to think, okay, let's
brands
get something new.
Lean into that, when, for instance, they make a movement that cannot be surfaced, then we're all up in arms.
Exactly,
like, hey,
yeah.
that's not what we want.
No, exactly. The
So it's a bit weird.
disposable thing versus versus the permanence. It's it's definitely something that doesn't quite gel there, right? It's a weird one. No, but I think it's a good discussion and an interesting topic. So I look forward to hearing what our audience have to say in the comments. And of course, speaking of which, we have a comment of the week here. It comes from Justin Galore 123. I believe he's a relative of a former Bond girl whose name I won't say on YouTube. It's a family-friendly show.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you get that, but well, somebody in the audience will.
It's a cat.
The Galore family. Yeah, exactly. Kitty Galore.
Kitty Galore.
So yes, let's get to the comment. It's about the topic that we did last week, which was, of course, is 2025 the year of the dress watch? We're talking all things dress watch. And he says, I would say yes. The idea has been floating around for a few years, but now it has clicked for some reason. I'm loving my smaller, dressy gold watches. So yeah, I think we were right. It's 2025 is finally the year of the dress watch. So smoke them if you got them, I guess. Thank you guys for joining me, and thank you for tuning in. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Let us know what you think about this fast pace that the industry seems to be heading in, and of course, join us next week for another episode of Fratello Talks. See you then. Nice.